we have a little something to share. We moved to the Netherlands. In about 3 months, we went from making the decision to move, selling our house in Austin, Texas, flying here, and getting our residence permit. And we decided to make a video about it.
This is the story of a married American couple with 2 cats and no kids that decided to move to the Netherlands using DAFT, aka the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty. This won't be a how-to exactly, it's just our story, but we hope it'll help guide you if you're interested in following the same path as us. So we're Buncharted, I'm Alex.
And I'm Michelle.
Let's get into it. So we're no strangers to moving. We've moved around the US a lot. I don't think we've ever really lived in one place for more than a few years.
Yeah, we get bored easily.
To really understand why we decided to move to the Netherlands, we need to go back to January 2020. Michelle and I had a really big trip planned. We were going to spend 6 to 12 months traveling the world. We quit our jobs and everything.
Yeah, it was supposed to start in March, but you know what happened. After it became clear that traveling wasn't going to be possible anytime soon, we decided to go back to work, and we got extremely burnt out. And cut to this year, 2022, when we were able to leave the US for the first time since 2019.
We visited Amsterdam in April. And on the way home, we Googled how to move to the Netherlands.
And then we did it.
It really wasn't that easy, but it also wasn't that difficult either. But by moving here, we get to appreciate all of the things that the Netherlands has to offer, like great public transit, a more relaxed way of life, inexpensive healthcare, fries with curry sauce, croquetten, poffertjes, kibbelen. Oh, and it becomes a lot easier to travel within Europe.
And 2 months later, we were here to live with our cats in tow. Okay, so since the entire moving and immigration process only took about 3 months, we thought it would make sense to break down what we did each month starting from the very beginning.
So we're actually in the Kop van Zuid neighborhood, which is one of the newer neighborhoods in Rotterdam. I think it was actually just started about 15, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's more like 10.
It used to be an old port area, a lot of port facilities, but they ended up building really tall residential buildings here, office buildings, and that's actually still where the cruise ships dock. Is that there? Cruise ship?
Cruise ship? After we made the decision, we both agreed that this is what we wanted to do, we figured it was going to be best to tackle 3 big things that month. And the first one was, what are we going to do with our house? This one was kind of an easy one. We knew we had to sell our house. The market in Austin was at its peak, and we knew that the money we were going to make from our house was going to be an excellent cushion for the next few years in the Netherlands. The next thing we needed to tackle was exactly how we go about getting a residence permit, and for that we decided to hire an immigration attorney. We did that because we felt like the stakes were really high, since for the DAFT visa, which was the visa we were using to move to the Netherlands, you actually have to move here before you can even begin the process. And I think if it was just the 2 of us, it wouldn't have mattered that much, but we were bringing 2 cats with us, and we really wanted to make sure we were getting it right, and that we were only going to bring them over to the Netherlands and not have to take them back just a couple of months later. And the last big thing that we had to tackle for the month of May was the huge question of, what the hell do we do with all of our stuff? And we went back and forth on this one about 1 million times. We could keep all of our stuff and move it across the ocean. We could sell literally everything that we've collected, or we could just move some of it. And we finally ended up deciding on moving some of our stuff. So we sold or gave away most of our things, and we really only wanted to keep the sentimental stuff. Like, for example, Alex's vinyl collection and all of the knickknacks that we've collected while traveling. We hired a moving company that actually handled not just the local part of the move, but the storage and the international shipping piece, which made it a lot easier. So currently, all of our stuff that we moved is technically still in Austin until our residence permit is approved. And then we'll officially start the process of moving it to a port in the United States, getting it on a shipping container, and then finally arriving maybe right here. I wouldn't say that we regret moving the things that we moved, but I would say that we have surprised ourselves with how little we actually miss since we've been here in the Netherlands. So I would say that our advice would be really pare down what you think you'll need and then do that again and again. And that's probably what you actually need. In June, we tackled some of the parts that we perceived to be really difficult and really stressful about the upcoming move, starting with, what do we need to do to move our cats? Well, let me back up. If you're not familiar with us, we have 2 cats. Sashimi, who's 13, and Pants, who's 7. And we love them dearly, and because of that, we've hauled them all around the country with us.
Feels like it's because we hate them. We've hauled them all the way around the country with us. Moving your cats to the Netherlands is somewhere between super easy and hard. You aren't required to do a whole lot, but you still have to do some stuff on a pretty tight timeline. The first 2 things we need to address were 1, getting our cats up to date on their rabies vaccinations, and then 2, making sure that they were both microchipped, and Sashimi was not. Both of those things are required by the Dutch to import your pets into the country. Finally, about 10 days before your actual arrival date in the Netherlands, you have to take your cats to the vet again so that you start this process of getting a certificate of health from the USDA, which document that your cats have the rabies vaccine, they've been microchipped, and then they endorse that and then send that back to you. And all that has to happen within that 10 days.
10 days. This was probably the part of the process that stressed us out the most. It was such a tight timeline, and we knew we were only going to get the certificate in the mail probably just like a couple of days before we were departing to the Netherlands. And then in the process, we also realized that that certificate was going to be sent to the address that we no longer lived at.
So 4 days before the day of travel, we relocated everything that we were moving, including our cats, to an Airbnb in Austin. I was still working, so I needed to have a comfortable place to work, and we needed to make sure our cats had time to adjust before we completely upended their lives once again.
Yep. The next thing we did, which was actually Alex's idea, was to book a room at the Schiphol airport on the day we arrived.
So this allowed us to get off the airplane and make a beeline straight for the hotel room, get the cats out, and get them as comfortable as possible. Overall, I think our plan went really well, especially for the travel day. Mm-hmm. I think the worst part for me for the travel day was when we went through, going through the airport in the United States, you have to take your cats, you basically go through secondary screening, you go into a private room, you have to take your cats out, they scan the cat carriers separately.
They scan the cat.
Yeah, so basically you have to take your cats out. It's the most stressful part of the trip, and it happens right at the beginning. It's stressful for us, and it's stressful for the cats.
Yeah, that was really stressful. I think overall, actually, the most stressful part of the travel day wasn't the travel day itself. It was all of the anticipation and what ifs leading up to the travel day. I was just so worried about absolutely everything that had to do with our cats, like the plane being delayed, the flight being delayed, what would happen if we got diverted, all these just crazy things that seem really realistic. But it was definitely all the anxiety leading up to the day for me.
Yeah. So the best part of the travel day, I think we both agree, was just how easy the whole day was overall.
Yep. My favorite part was probably after we arrived, laying in the hotel bed, relaxing and eating a club sandwich.
What do you think, Sashimi? Was it worth it? Are you going to respond?
Once we were settled in our temporary apartment, our attention really started to focus on finding a long-term place to rent, which is actually probably a good way to talk about how we ended up in Rotterdam to begin with. So we were working with an immigration attorney, as we mentioned before, and there's a series of appointments that we have to schedule in order to get our residence permit. And in every single city, those appointments were backed up by months. And the only city that they weren't maybe only backed up by weeks was actually Rotterdam. So that's how we ended up here to begin with. Also, we hadn't really anticipated the housing shortage that was happening here in the Netherlands. We cast a really wide net of cities that we were looking to potentially rent in. So we were looking at Den Haag, Leiden, Haarlem, just to name a few. And we really thought we were going to be desirable renters. We had rented in the US. We had actually even owned multiple homes in the US.
Not at the same time.
not at the same time. We could also offer several months of rent in advance, but there wasn't that much on the market, and the Dutch rental market is really focused on providing proof that you're making 3 times the amount of rent. Also, properties were going way above asking, and we had 2 cats. That said, we ended up finding a great place in Rotterdam, and we think that there were 2 factors that contributed to that. So one, we worked with an agent, and she was super, super helpful being able to schedule showings in an incredibly competitive market. Also, she was able to better communicate our situation as entrepreneurs to the landlords and provide recommendations for what we could do to better increase our chances of landing the home. And we really, really love our flat here. Let's get back to the residence permit. So the week after we arrived in Rotterdam, we had our registration appointment, which is basically the first step to kick everything off. And here's an important tidbit. Before you arrive in the Netherlands, while you're still in the US, make sure you get your birth certificate and your marriage certificate apostilled, which is basically like a fancy word for getting it notarized so it'll be recognized internationally, because they're not going to accept it if you don't get that done. 2 weeks later, we received our BSNs in the mail, and your BSN is basically like your Dutch social security number. So once you receive that, you can open your personal bank account, and then like at least at T-Mobile, you can get a proper phone plan that way. It also allowed us to schedule our KVK meeting.
What's BSN stand for?
Burger Service Nummer. Burger.
So then we had the meeting with the KVK, and that's where you register your business and you get your KVK number, which you can then use to create a business bank account, which you need to deposit the required investment into the company to as part of the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty or the DAFT visa. KVK is kind of like the Dutch Chamber of Commerce, I guess. But at that point, I notified our bookkeeper. They drew up the documents that were needed. We submitted those documents to the IND, and basically our part of the application was done. So all that was left is to wait to hear back from the IND.
It's been 84 years.
Well, it's been about 2 weeks, and
We got the letter we've been waiting for. And although we're wrapping this video up without the actual permits in hand, there's not much left except for more waiting. Specifically the appointment that we need to schedule to actually pick up the cards, which will be in a few weeks.
I can't believe we only decided to move to the Netherlands a little over 3 months ago. If you have any questions about moving to the Netherlands, ask them in the comments below and we'll do our best to answer them. Or maybe just tell us that we're crazy.
If you want to follow our adventures as expats in the Netherlands, subscribe to our channel, and if this video was helpful to you, please tap that like button. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.